Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagoshnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And on the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from theathletic.com. He is useful human Arif Hasan. Arif, we're finally playing your favorite team.
I'm not a Seahawks fan, guys.
Not a Seahawks fan or blogger?
Or blogger. The last time I wrote in a Seahawks blog, which I'm really unfortunate to say, is a qualifier I have to make.
The last time, man, you do that like 3 times in college, and all of a sudden,
yeah, it was like 2014, maybe 2015, something like that. It was whenever Antoine Winfield was with the Seahawks, and I was like, oh, I know about Antoine, but I can tell them about who he is. That's all it was. I swear.
That's all it was. You don't check your phone every once in a while. Maybe send some like late night are you up like text or anything like that.
Okay, if I hypothetically, if I did,
that was a real nice pregnant pause there.
I'm not saying I did. I will formally deny those charges. But if it comes out that that's something that I did, I mean, that's just what drunk people do, man. That's not a big deal.
So you're just going to excuse it on, okay. Like many
I'm not excusing anything because nothing happened. I'm just saying, were it to happen, not a big deal.
If you thought it, you said it, according to the rules and standards of certain religions. So yeah. we're just gonna run with that. And with that, let's start the show.
Hello, welcome.
Welcome to Norse Code. Again, thank you guys for joining us. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate to the show, you can do so in one of 2 different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode, or you can go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well. Patreon is obviously a more of a monthly subscription, and PayPal is just a one-time donation. But anything you would like to throw our way, we really would appreciate. Tree Fitty help keeps Loch Ness Monster at bay, stuff like that. We are running toward the end of the year, which also means that the clip shows will be coming out here in just a little bit, most likely around the week of Christmas. So you can look out for them. I've had a lot of fun going through some of the old shows, some of the behind the scenes banter, including the entirety of the Dusty phone call, which was incredibly funny.
Yeah. Oh man.
There's some good Dusty in there that we will be sharing. So be looking out for that. This episode we are going to be previewing the game against the Seahawks, which will be happening on Monday night, I believe. And we are doing so with a very special guest that longtime listeners of the show are familiar with. He has gone on to be a pretty big deal in the online football community. He is the Ringer's Danny Kelly. Danny's gonna be on the show.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun talking to Danny about the Seahawks.
It was just like old times back when you covered the Seahawks.
God damn it, James!
It was a wonderful, wonderful time in all of our lives. And let's just jump into that. So here is an interview that was conducted earlier today with Arif and Danny Kelly from theringer.com.
All right, yeah, so I've got Danny Kelly, formerly the editor at Field Gulls, but now a hotshot writer at The Ringer.
Yeah.
The smartest guy I know who claims he's not smart. So, no, I mean, you always tell me how football dumb you are, and then you come up with this like great article that's like, a bunch of X's and O's and advanced. I mean, you gotta give yourself more credit, dude.
I should just change my brand to like just a cocky a-hole.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that'd be. I mean, you got the sunglasses for it. I see your Skype avatar, so you just gotta embrace it. I think that'd be good. I think that would be, especially because the Ringer's like a cultural website too. I think that would be great for your brand overall.
Yeah, it probably would be. People like to argue on the internet and whatnot, and generally, the meaner you are, the more famous you become. So.
Yeah, no, I've taken that turn. It's worked out for me.
You turned heel.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, no. You just wrote. Speaking of the Ringer, you just wrote an article about Russell Wilson. To prep for this podcast, I read the first half of the article. Sorry, I was very busy.
Oh,
but
it was a very long article in your defense.
Yeah, I mean, how could I possibly be expected to read long articles? But yeah, it was pretty good, and at least the part I read. Who knows, the second half might have been terrible.
Should I read the rest to you?
Yeah, that'd be great content. But no, just generally tell me what the article's about, and kind of what. I mean, it's not really an article with a ton of conclusions, but what conclusions you came to and stuff.
Yeah, so like basically, I kind of went into it trying to. The question was like, how do we assess Wilson's career, basically? Because I think throughout his career, he's basically, people generally know he's good. I think people acknowledge that he's good, but there's a lot of caveats always attached to his career. Like he's had a great defense behind him. He's had a great run game, paired with Marshawn Lynch, blah, blah, blah. His numbers, his counting stats generally aren't as good as a lot of other quarterbacks because they run a low volume pass offense. So a lot of people kind of, I think, still consider him a bit of a game manager, all that stuff. I kind of just tried to take a look at it and figure out how we really assess Wilson's career. And I watched a bunch of all 22 of him from the season. And basically,
you're a hashtag grinder. Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching hashtag tape. And no, I mean, I think I basically came to the conclusion that number one, he's playing the best football of his career right now. In terms of the sophistication, he uses as a passer. I really like the way he's moving around in the pocket. He's always had good pocket numbers. Like people always say, oh, he's not a pocket passer, which is not true necessarily. But at the same time,
so he's like managing the pocket a lot. I think more traditionally, right? Because a lot of times he would spin out, and now he's sliding up and stuff like that. Is that what you're getting? Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. So, like, earlier in his career, I think he had a habit, especially the last couple of seasons, of bailing from clean pockets, even if there was a hint of pressure, because obviously the Seahawks offensive line has been terrible for several years now. And he wasn't very good, frankly, at stepping up into, like, a muddied pocket and making a pass. Generally, he would try and escape out or drop back or whatever. Now, I think he's definitely doing a really good job, at least last 7, 8, 9 weeks of, doing like what Drew Brees does, which is move subtly around in the pocket, find passing lanes, stick with plays, and make stick passes from, when there's still pressure kind of happening. So that's been really huge. The run game is not a big part of his game right now, which I think is something people were worried about. Like, how is he going to do when he has to actually become a pocket passer like Drew Brees or whatever? And I think he's passing a lot of tests.
That's a pretty big change just from like last year, right? He was the leading rusher on the team last year, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had I think 550 or so yards of rushing, which was more than twice as many as any of the other running backs on the team. 3 or 4 touchdowns on the ground. There was only one other rushing touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember there was like a fun like Bronx cheer sarcastic surprise when a running back touchdown occurred.
Yeah. So he had like 81% of the Seahawks offense last year. Obviously, the strategies changed. They're much heavier run team this year. They're more effective running the ball, and he's sort of changed in the sense that he's doing a lot of deep passing this season, which I think it really fits him really well. Right. So like their offense, the evolution of their offense and the evolution of how he's playing, I think is kind of what has kind of affected him the most this year, and I think why he's playing so well right now. Now, that all being said, I'm a little bit worried that I wrote a glowing, flowery article about Russell Wilson's pocket presence right before he plays the Vikings.
Right, yeah.
Which, the Vikings are probably going to give him hell up front, and so it's going to be a real test to see how he does against that, and it wouldn't surprise me if, they get a couple of sacks on him, and there's a few situations where I'm just like, oh, crap, I should have waited a week to write this. But I do think overall, generally speaking, he's been very, very good in the pocket, which I think is a huge, huge step for him.
All right. So I saw this on the timeline a couple weeks ago. He could totally beat up Future, right?
I think that's a huge that's an ongoing debate, right?
How is that a debate? I mean, he's he's built, dude.
He's built like a tank.
Right? Like he only looks small compared to like the lineman he's getting crushed underneath.
I think people still really highly underrate how tough football players are.
If anyone has like an iron chin, man, it's Russell Wilson.
Okay, I haven't actually checked on this recently. I'm pretty sure he's never missed a practice in his career. 7 years.
What?
Yeah, he's never even missed practice. I could be wrong. It could have like happened recent.
Right.
Because I know that he had like a knee injury last season, so he might have maybe like was limited or some shit. But like he's never missed a game, and I don't even know if he's ever missed a practice, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same page with it. Like even if Future gets some shots off, they just won't have an impact on him. Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Plus
I guess
he's got the nano bubbles going on. So like,
yeah. Right.
Even if he does
they're
get
healing his
concussed, he's totally
concussions.
fine.
Yeah. No. It's great. All right, well, so you're in a weird position where you've got this like aggressively run-first offense. You've got a team that's been like defined in almost mythical terms by its defense, and you end up with a team that actually I think it looks more like a 70s style offense than it does like what we consider modern defense or run the ball first offenses, which are game managing offenses where you get like a bunch of short passes and try to maintain possession. But this one's like, get them on the ropes and then a big play kind of offense. Right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like a 70s offense, right?
I actually, when Schottenheimer got hired,
Well, everyone hated the hire.
Laughed.
Right?
Yeah, I was just like, God damn it. Like, what? But to his credit, he's actually designed and the Seahawks have executed an offense that I think is actually kind of fun to watch. I mean, Chris Carson's a fun runner. He kind of like picks up yards after contact and all that. And then, like you said, it's one of those things where they do go for the haymakers a lot. I saw Sports Info Solutions was tweeting out a story they had where Russell Wilson's essentially the most efficient / effective deep ball passer in the NFL this year based on their metrics. I mean, I saw the Seahawks have they have 12 or 13, I think, 40-yard passes this season, which is tied with Kansas City, who's thrown it 100 more times than them. So they're passing deep at a high clip. They're very, very efficient at it. Like Tyler Lockett has been incredible on deep balls. David Moore has emerged kind of as a threat down the field. And so, yeah, I mean, their offense, it's not the same as what they were doing early in Wilson's career. It's a little bit different, obviously, but it kind of just fits his skill set perfectly. It actually reminds me the most of what Wilson was doing at Wisconsin, which is where they run the ball, down your throat, and then they throw it over your head when you start kind of like cheating on that or whatever, trying to get up and stop the run. So it works in concert. It's working really well, but I think this is important. Like, it just wouldn't work if Wilson wasn't passing the hell out of the ball. Right. That's like the huge key. He's just incredible down the field.
Should they throw the ball more? I mean, it's kind of nuts to me. He has fewer passing attempts than like Mitchell Trubisky, who's missed a couple games.
Yeah. It's one of those things to me where I don't think the way that they're running is bad because they've been relatively effective running the ball. Maybe I can't stand when they run in second and long. And there's been a few drives where they basically wave the white flag after first down and just like start running it until they punt. So that like bugs the hell out of me. But I do think they've managed to hit a pretty good balance between run and the pass. And
he's got fewer passing attempts than Carson Wentz by like a lot.
And Wentz, how many games? Wentz missed a couple games.
I think he missed like 2 or 3 games. And then the first game back, they wanted to run the ball a lot too. So like,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, last week I guess is a good example. He had. At one point, I think he had 3 touchdowns and 5 total attempts. So that works. I mean, if that's what you're doing, that works. His touchdown percentage right now is, I think, 8.9%, which is second in the NFL, only to Mahomes. And I think Bob Condotta tweeted it. It would be like 5th all time on the list in terms of his touchdown percentage.
That sounds about right.
I mean, I don't have any problem with the way that it's working out. I think if they continue to run well, then I don't have a huge problem with their run rate. But they have to continue to run well in order to kind of keep it up. So,
have you gotten into fights with Ben Baldwin about this? Like, do you like genuinely think that the volume of runs or the ratio of run to passes has enabled increased efficiency from the passing game? And I mean, if so, that would put you in conflict with a decent chunk of fantasy Twitter and Seahawks Twitter. I mean, how do you resolve this? I mean, because like the data is the data, right? But like, I mean, you also have your own thoughts and opinions. How do you resolve this?
I would say, number one, I don't necessarily disagree with Ben. I think I actually probably on the spectrum am much closer to what his opinion is. I'm not necessarily I don't really know how to frame it. I think I've always kind of taken the really simplistic approach where if you're running well, that's fine. That works with me. Like running well is fun, and running poorly is really annoying and terrible because it's simply just not as efficient. But I think they could probably pass a little bit more and that'd be fine. But at the end of the day, I think I do think I don't think the running enables Wilson to pass well. I think the balance they've sort of achieved this season is a good way. I guess it's a good mix in terms of getting the most efficient out of Russell Wilson, because obviously we've seen with the way that they can use the play action, the way they can throw the ball over teams' heads. It's like a surgical passing attack versus a volume passing attack. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's been really effective. But so that's kind of, that's sort of sitting on the fence. I don't disagree with Ben. I think generally speaking, teams probably still run too much, but I think the Seahawks have found a pretty good equilibrium in terms of what they want to do. So I don't have a huge problem with the way that they're running their offense. I'll put it that way.
Okay, that's all fair, I guess. Yeah, it's difficult to complain when you've got, kind of these results coming in. Do you think we're hitting a point where is it blasphemous for me to even bring this up? But is the Seahawks offense better than the defense?
Oh no, that's not blasphemous at all. I don't think so.
It feels like it should be, right?
It's weird. It's definitely different because the Seahawks have always sort of based their identity around their defense, and it's been such a big part of them. But this season they got rid of so much talent, and I mean Richard Sherman and Michael Bennett are still playing at a very high level. Obviously, I think both of those guys could have come in handy this season. The Seahawks have had some issues with their corners and coverage. Their pass rush has generally not been great. Frank Clark's been good, but they haven't been able to get a ton of pressure. If you look at their pressure numbers, it's not very good.
So if they had maybe a little bit more pressure at the defensive tackle position, maybe that would help.
I think I know what you're doing here. Leading question, Your Honor. I will say though, even after losing Tom Johnson and Sheldon Richardson, they've gotten pretty good production from Jaron Reed. Naz Jones has come on strong lately. It's not like it's necessarily a huge hole for them, but having Sheldon Richardson and even Tom Johnson would be nice. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
It hasn't been the biggest problem in their defense. But yeah,
the way that Zach Whitman and Ben Baldwin just tweet sad things whenever I tweet a Sheldon Richardson stat always makes me think, oh wow, they must be really hurting at defense. Well, we'll talk more about defensive tackle in a bit.
Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let's talk about some of these positions because we talked a lot about the running game. Chris Carson, 7th round pick, really fantastic. I think I saw either Mike Zimmer or another coach was like, yeah, he's actually one of the best running backs in the NFL. Which cool. I mean that might be I'm not going to disagree, but so there's a first round pick, 3rd on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And I know this conversation is super tired for Seahawks people.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not tired for the rest of us. So you're just gonna have to rehash it. What's the deal?
What were we gonna ask?
What's the deal?
So, yeah, I don't like the fact that they used a first round pick on a running back. I think Rashad Penny has played well lately. He's kind of shown some burst and some explosiveness that we didn't see early on in the season. I still don't know necessarily if there's, quote, first round traits there, especially when you see Philip Lindsay just running all over the whole NFL. It's just kind of frustrating. But I think the reason, if you want to get in the Seahawks' head, the reason that they did that, they picked Rashad Penny with a first round pick was Carson was coming off a season where he got hurt. He was a rookie. They went through this thing.
Sounds a lot like Thomas Rawls.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say they went through this whole thing with Thomas Rawls where Rawls had a great rookie year, was I think he led the NFL in success rate. He just was all over the place, and then he got hurt, came back, and for some reason he just could not recreate the success he had early in his career. I'm guessing if you got in the Seahawks' head, they were just thinking the same thing with Carson. And Carson's gotten hurt a couple times this season, so
that's true. And then they called upon Mike Davis.
Yeah, so No, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like I can't defend the Seahawks' decision to take a pick, take a running back with the first round pick. I just don't think it makes any sense. There's just too much talent later in the draft. There's too much talent.
And I imagine
Davis look good too. So like,
right.
I just don't. I don't have any good argument for taking a running back in the first round. I don't think it was a smart move. Now that they're stuck with that though, like after like post decision,
right.
I'm a little bit bullish
like
on Penny. Yeah. Like I think Penny could end up being good. He's right now. I guess he's playing at. Carroll said this. He's playing at 240.
What? I thought he was like 225.
He weighed in, I want to say, at 220 at the combine. Guys tend to lose weight and try as fast as they can at the combine or whatever. But
well, it depends on the position. Like if they're a linebacker, sometimes they want to add weight. But yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Penny's looked pretty good lately. He doesn't have the same wiggle as Carson. I think Carson's a better player generally, but for a team that just wants to, beat you up or whatever, and the term that gets made fun of on Twitter all the time is body blows, but I think it is really what they want to do. Like they just want to beat up on you. They want your defense to feel you. By the end of the game, they want to know that you've played a tough team is basically how Carroll frames it. And so
we've seen a lot of boxing metaphors in this particular podcast, which that's not a criticism, but I mean, let's continue.
I use those all the time. It's like I think in the boxing metaphor is like the Seahawks, they want to set you up with body blows and then go for the knockout punch later, which is those deep bombs. And so, I don't know, for what the Seahawks want to do, I guess it makes sense. I generally I don't think Penny's shown us enough necessarily that I'm like, hell yeah, he was worth a first round pick. But I think going forward, he could be a definite a plus for them going forward. I don't think he's a bust or anything.
Right. He's good to have on a roster.
Right, exactly.
Which is definitely a thing you want to say about your first round pick.
Ultimately, if you look back on the Seahawks first round picks, I mean,
that's true.
The Seahawks have not necessarily done great.
More successful than a lot. Well, Jermaine Ifedi is turning out. Let's talk about the offensive line in a second.
Okay. Yeah.
But just final notes about this running back group. J.D. McKissick, is he a running back or a receiver?
I think he's more of like a slot receiver. I want to say he actually played receiver some in college.
Yeah, he did.
So he had like tons and tons of catches in college. He, to me, is more like, I don't even know who to compare him to, but he's more of a receiver than a running back. I guess
that means there's only 4 running backs on the roster. That's weird to me. It doesn't feel like the Seahawks at all.
Yeah, and so I guess, because do you count Trey Madden? I guess you could have him be a runner or whatever. But yeah, so McKissick, I mean, he can run the ball. And he has taken handoffs from the backfield and all that. But yeah, he's definitely more of just a receiving running back, I would say. So yeah, they I guess right now they're going with I guess they trust Penny and Davis to pick up the load or whatever if Carson goes down. Carson actually, he dislocated his finger last week, but supposedly he's good to go going forward. So
piece of cake, no big deal. I'm sure that doesn't hurt at all.
I was trying to look at their practice squad. They don't even have any running backs on their practice squad either. I don't know what they would do.
Wow.
Had a couple
Okay.
Injuries.
Yeah, right.
Guess they give it to David Moore or something. He's pretty athletic.
I mean, you could probably convince Tyrone Swoops to be a running back, right?
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the offensive line. So that I think is one of the more interesting stories that speaks to the impact that coaching has on a roster because it's like basically the same people.
Yeah.
It speaks to maybe having a new offensive coordinator, and it speaks to I think the importance of having a good offensive line because, like you said, Russell Wilson may be playing his best football of all time. That obviously a lot of that has to do with some of the specific changes he's made, moving up in the pocket and so on.
Yeah.
But it's got to help to have that offensive line because they're grading well, I think, by PFF standards, and then Russell Wilson still is getting pressured the same amount. Which obviously that's just he's got more time in the pocket and he's just going to use it because that's who he is.
Right.
So, I mean, but let's talk about like what Mike Solari, I think that's the offensive line coach, right?
Yep. He's a god here in Seattle right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the number of times I've seen his name on a Seahawks Twitter like screen name, it's astounding. Yes. What's the difference between besides that one is good and one is bad? What's the difference between Tom Cable and Mike Solari? Is there even a different running scheme? They're also pass protecting better, so that can't just be it. What's the deal?
Well, for starters, yeah, they've integrated power running into their scheme a lot more. I don't actually have the numbers in front of me, so maybe it's just my impression, but they do run power in terms of pulling guards from left to right. They do like the crack toss stuff a little bit more often. They're getting the guy outside. They do some of that.
They drafted a bunch of zone linemen. They got a zone lineman in free agency in Dwayne Brown. And Mike Solari is like, yeah, I mean, we've got the roster to do a lot of power moves, and it's working.
Yeah, and so DJ Fluker has been kind of a big addition, I think, to their offensive line. He's hurt right now. He's got a pretty significant hamstring injury, so he's not going to play. But going back, I mean, he's been, I think, a big factor in the offensive line. They got J.R. Sweezy. I want to say Sweezy got released early in the season from the Buccaneers. And Sweezy was a guy who they had early in his – Sweezy started out in Seattle. They converted him to offensive line.
Yeah, I was about to say he's one of the position switches, right?
Yeah, he was a defensive lineman in college. They turned him into an offensive lineman. He got a big contract with the Bucs, and then he was like hurt, I think, most of the time, and he got released. And he's come back. He's been pretty good for them. He actually took over for Ethan Posich, who was a starter last season. And
what position does Posich play? I mean, like, because he's a center in college, played right tackle for a little bit for Seattle.
He was playing guard. Played guard mostly.
Okay.
So yeah, he's
like 6'7". That's so tough.
Yeah. He was 6'6", 6'7". He just didn't really do much last season. He didn't play that well. He kind of got replaced. He's more of like a backup swing guard, swing tackle. He probably, I guess, could come in for tackle. They got George Fant back from an ACL injury. Right. He's kind of been their swing tackle / tight end. He's actually playing a ton of snaps. Does
PFF list him as a tight end then? Because they do it by like where you line up a lot.
Yeah, they probably do. Actually, I'm going to look at their snap counts here. But, yeah, I mean, so generally speaking, they've changed the scheme up a little bit from like a more of like a 100% zone team to they're doing some more power stuff. They're doing other things like that, like I said, crack toss and all that. But I think the other thing is, yeah, I think they're just maybe have a little bit higher focus on pass protection. If you look at Tom Cable's career, in terms of where his teams rank in pass protection, like it's almost uniformly terrible. It just was, I don't know whether
like pre-Seattle as well.
Yeah. Going all the way back to like Oakland and Atlanta, wherever. When he was offensive line coach, the teams that he was coaching have almost universally terrible pass protection numbers. He's obviously had a lot of success coaching teams that run well. And I think that's what Carroll ultimately wanted. Like that's what he saw in him. But yeah, it's just for whatever reason, the Seahawks have kind of figured out a technique. I can't speak to the technique that they teach if it's different or whatever. But it's clearly made a difference. And so George Fant, just going back, he's played 166 snaps this season, 20%. So that he's a swing tackle. Whew. So 1 out of 5 snaps approximately he's in there. So that's pretty interesting. He's essentially a tight end. He's actually he's played more snaps than Rashad Penny. That's great.
Wow, incredible. That's it says I'm looking at the snap counts at PFF. 154 of his snaps have been, quote unquote, at the tight end position.
There you go.
Which that's just what every jumbo tackle gets listed as. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's one player here I'm not that familiar with. So I knew about Jermaine Ifedi. I knew about Justin Britt. For a while, he was like counterintuitively the best performing lineman because he was good at center but bad at tackle, I think. J.R. Sweezy, Dwayne Brown, I know about all of them. Our Lads has someone named Jordan Simmons, which I initially confused as the safety from Oklahoma, Justin Simmons, I think.
Wouldn't surprise me if the Seahawks maybe try that, but yeah.
Right. Is he? Sometimes our Lads kind of gets the players mixed up. Is he right now the starting right guard? And okay, so who is he?
That actually, I'm not a huge help on that. I know that he's a former USC guy. Started out in Oakland, but to be honest, I don't know a ton about him. He played, I want to say, like 10 snaps last week and did pretty well. I do think it speaks to how well he's played. Like the fact that he's starting is significant, especially considering Ethan Posich is on the roster. You know what I mean? So
right.
I think that's definitely a vote of confidence for him. I don't really know that much about him. Totally, he's a brand new player essentially, and so. We'll kind of see how that goes. Like I said before, Fluker was playing pretty well. Fluker kind of gave them this punch you in the mouth. Again, another boxing thing. It's like punch you in the mouth kind of attitude. Like Fluker he's just a badass. And so We'll see if that changes anything in the Seahawks sort of mentality or their identity. But I do think, yeah, I mean, it is kind of meaningful that he's starting and not Postage, because Postage was a starter last season, and so apparently they're pretty high on him.
All right.
But I don't know anything about him, to be honest. I know that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah.
Fetty has taken, I think, a big step this season, and that actually might.
So let's
speak
talk
to
about him.
Solari.
So was he Texas A&M guy, right?
Yes, he was former A&M guy, first round pick for the Seahawks three seasons ago in 2016.
Right, and like I think people talked about him in relation to, I think the Falcons tackle Jake Matthews was a Texas A&M guy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think that people talked about him in relation to Jake Matthews, and like they're polar opposite. So Matthews is coming out of a spread system, so the technique's going to be different, but he's technically sound and all that. And like Fetty is like large.
Yeah, he's huge. He's like 330, I want to say.
Right. But that was like the scouting report is like, well, he's big.
And that's basically what he was the first two seasons. Like okay. He was a turnstile for the Seahawks. And I want to say last year...
Your speed bumps should at least be large. I mean, if your speed bumps are small, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, he's got long arms, so you got to go around him or whatever. But no, he led... The other thing that was just like really frustrating for Seahawks fans, and I know that a lot of people were like, man, why won't they give up on this fucking guy? Like... At some point, you got to like put someone else in the way he's been playing, right. And that was kind of the book on him the first two seasons. And he led the NFL last season in penalties, just constantly false starting, constantly holding.
Yeah, I remember. I think in the first game this season, he had like a penalty of some sort, and Seahawks sort of just blew up.
God, yeah, he became like a villain. He was the scapegoat. Well, Tom Cable's definitely the scapegoat still,
right?
But, some of that might be
it's
legit,
okay. You can have multiple villains. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, Fetty, I think he's taken quite a few steps in the sense that, and this is kind of like a cliche, but like the less you hear a lineman's name, generally that's a good thing. And you haven't really heard much from Fetty this season, which is great because he hasn't had a ton of penalties, which was a huge just killing so many drives last season with stupid penalties. Like a lot of them were pre-snap penalties. It's just like, come on. And, he's been better generally just in pass pro and blocking and everything like that. I don't know. Like he's one of those guys where I haven't noticed him a lot, which is a good thing, I think. And so a lot of positive steps in that sense. And I think that's been really big for them. And that speaks to Solari in the sense that for whatever reason, they figured out how to make him a little more disciplined, especially like in the pre-snap stuff, like with no false starts and all that. And that's been huge.
So this, you were talking about like his penalties. So I thought this was interesting. So he has half as many penalties this year as he did last year.
Nice,
huge improvement, right?
Yeah.
He is fourth among NFL tackles in penalties this year.
Still. Hey, look, everything's relative, I guess.
Right? Yeah, right. I mean, he'll take
That's
it,
hilarious.
Right? Like
Here I am singing his praises. That is good, though. I guess it's still
It's. I mean, you were saying like words like improvement, right? And that's definitely what that is.
Look, he's not a miracle worker, all right, Solari. So that's good though.
Right.
That's funny. I guess I just haven't really noticed, but apparently he's still getting enough penalties. That's funny. God.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's talk about the most important position group for the Seahawks, the tight ends. Yeah. So we've got Nick Vanette, we've got Ed Dixon. Mm-hmm. We had Will Dissly, RIP.
Damn it.
Sorry. Which I mean, he was like a fun fantasy tease for a bit.
Yeah.
I guess Tyrone Swopes has actually seen snaps, so he must be rotating on the active and on the practice squad.
Yeah, he hasn't really done much lately. He's been up and down, I think, from the...
He's the quarterback from Texas, right?
Yeah, and and I know that right now it looks like he's on the practice squad. He at one point last year, I remember hearing kind of through the grapevine the Seahawks were really high on him. But that I guess it just hasn't really materialized quite yet. They signed Dixon, and then Swoops was like a 4th or 5th round pick, and so he kind of probably just got passed up. But I think he's still kind of in their picture. He's definitely in their plans.
Oh, speaking of players who play other positions that could be running backs, also Keenan Reynolds. is on the practice squad. So you've got a couple of running back options.
Yeah.
He's kind of hidden in there.
He's the other guy that's been kind of up and down from the practice squad. You hear his name every once in a while. I don't think he's gotten many snaps, though.
Yeah, fair enough. He has to learn football. That's
he
not
was
fair.
a quarterback.
He's a quarterback, right? Yeah. But I mean, like in a triple option offense.
That is actually pretty interesting. So yeah.
He's like your Jerick McKinnon. Maybe not quite. So you got Nick Vannett,
Vannett, I think is how I say it. I've heard people say Vannett too, but I don't really know.
Yeah, you've got the Buckeye. You've got Ed Dickson. I guess you have George Fant. It feels like the Seahawks just like abandoned the tight end. They were just like, we don't really need this. Kind of like the Rams, actually. They've got even talented ones, and they're like, well, we don't need to play them. And the Seahawks were like, we don't even need to invest in them.
Yeah, they got rid of. Maybe they were overcorrecting from the whole Jimmy Graham trade or whatever. But
yeah, it's kind of what it feels like.
I think Vannett is like they drafted Vannett and they talked all about how he's one of these rare. I don't know what.
I got him in one of my super sleeper leagues. I'm very upset.
Yeah, they talked about him like he was. I don't know what you call it, like a two-way tight end where he can block and play receiver. I don't even know, a full tight end. Whereas
probably complete. I think is the word.
Yeah. Well, like nowadays, I guess tight end.
No, yeah. It's like Gronk and I guess Kelsey.
Yeah, Kelsey.
There's at least one more, but
Kittle for sure.
Oh yeah, Kittle. There you go.
I think what they thought Vannett would be like Kittle, and it hasn't really panned out. That's not to say that he's been bad, because he's actually, he's been sort of reliable as like a third down target. He does have 2 touchdowns this year. The one touchdown he caught against the Rams was incredible. Like Wilson threw 100-mile-an-hour fastball to him from like 10 feet away, and he caught
finally another sport we can use as a metaphor. Okay, excellent.
Oh yeah, did you know that Russell Wilson played baseball?
Oh wow, no, fascinating. I heard he got drafted by a baseball team.
No one really talks about it, that he was a second baseman. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, but yeah, no, Vannett's been fine. I was really stoked about Whistly. I was really stoked about Disley, but he tore his patellar, which is potentially career-ending, which sucks.
Right.
And then Ed Dickson has been a bit of a non-factor. I think they got him. The reasoning behind signing him, I want to say, in the offseason was because he's a good pass-protecting tight end. And so in their heavy play action stuff, he can, kind of be counted on as like a tackle on the end. And so I think that's kind of where they saw him, and the numbers kind of backed that up. He was on the PUP list to start the season, so he's just kind of getting back into action now.
I mean, he's Ed Dickson. I mean, he's probably going to get injured.
They gave him kind of like a big contract too. Everyone was like, "What? No. What? Why did you give him so much money? That's weird." But yeah, so he hasn't really done a whole lot, but he's sort of just like he's a jag in terms of the tight end position, but he's not bad or anything.
Sure. I think the most interesting conversation to be had about the Seahawks roster has to be the receivers. It feels like they're perpetually, quote unquote, underrated, right?
Always, yeah.
It just seems to be like the MO is like, yeah, no one respects those receivers. But I mean, they were like fascinating, right? Because you got Tyler Lockett, whose numbers coming out of college weren't great. I think he ran like a pretty average 40. He's your deep threat. You've got Doug Baldwin, who I guess he's a slot receiver, but like really he just does everything.
Yeah.
You've got David Moore, who I don't know. So it feels like, because I follow so much of Seahawks Twitter, it feels like David Moore is on this like weird Adam Thielen-ish trajectory, but for Seattle, where he's developed a cult hero status.
I recently told. I think I was telling Danny Heifetz on my podcast co-host that I think
the Dantasy podcast.
The Dantasy podcast, yeah. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think that David Moore is gonna be a star.
A star?
Yeah, maybe not a.
What's the threshold of a star? Like 1,200 yards a year?
Yeah. I guess what is the? Is there like a Mendoza line or whatever for that?
For like a star? That's okay.
How about
man.
Let's say like Robert Woods. Not a star necessarily, but like not. But he's like.
I don't want to like rank on Robert Woods either.
Know him.
He's good, right?
Maybe that was a bad one. I don't know.
1,200 was maybe a little bit aggressive, but I mean, like, So is Mike Evans a star? Because he's really good.
Yeah, he's not Mike Evans.
Okay.
Will Fuller?
Brandon Cooks. How about that?
Brandon Cooks is maybe a good one. Though I think Brandon Cooks is probably super underrated.
No, that's true too. Well, Keenan, also underrated. Keenan Allen.
Yeah, he's not Keenan Allen. Let's not go too far. But I think I think Robert Woods actually is pretty good. Like a very good player who people probably don't consider a star. I could see that being David Moore's sort of trajectory.
All right. Okay.
How about that?
A star.
It's all very subjective. But yeah.
Right. What's his story? Because it feels like there's a story behind all of this, right?
He was a random computer-generated player coming out of college. He played at...
It must have been difficult not growing up / not having parents.
He played at East Central Oklahoma, which I'm actually not sure is a real school.
They have at least a pass rusher somewhere in the NFL. I know that. There's some random small school defensive end from East Central Oklahoma. I do know that.
When he was drafted, he was a 7th rounder. So the Seahawks actually, their 7th round last season.
It's really good, huh?
Chris Carson and David Moore.
Wow.
And so they're two guys I literally never had heard of. That's embarrassing for me to say. But when I looked up David Moore when they drafted him, his NFL.com profile was literally blank. And so
amazing.
Made me feel a little bit better. But he's one of those small school guys who killed his pro day. Like very, very athletic, very productive in college, even though I'm not sure his college is real.
I just looked up his college on PFR, so we're going to talk about that in a second.
But yeah, no, he's one of those guys that he kind of snuck in under the radar. Very good body control, extremely good athlete, good hands. And he's
so that's the thing, right? Because the Seahawks love getting really good athletes, and there have been a lot of really interesting athletes to come from small schools, especially the receiver position. But a lot of them, say like Minnesota's former Charles Johnson, don't have body control, right? And David Moore seems to demonstrate really spectacular body control.
Yeah, I think to me that's the thing that stood out the most. Early on, like in preseason, he had good numbers in the last 2 preseasons, and I was just like watching him. And I know this is like kind of silly, but he honestly reminded me a little bit of Golden Tate in the way that he can
my God,
the way that he can turn around and keep running full speed and like contort his body in that sense. He's not Golden Tate, obviously, and I know that everyone that's good at like running.
No, he's Keenan Allen. We already discussed this.
I know that everyone compares everything to Golden Tate because he's so like athletic and everything, but that was what it reminded me of in the way that he can kind of move his upper body around and keep his feet going straight forward. It's just kind of innate, and so that's what he reminded me of. He's had a couple really, really impressive like at the catch point, contested catches this season. He had what was eventually the game tying touchdown against the Panthers where he caught it with one hand in the back of the end zone on 4th and 3 or on 4th down or whatever. And so that was like a huge play. He almost caught what could have been the game tying touchdown against the Rams, but it got tipped at the very last second and kind of bounced off his chest plate. Anyways, he's making his way up in the world in the Seahawks. Obviously, there's not a lot of volume in that passing offense. I think Russell Wilson threw it 17 times last week, but
Richard Sherman made it a point of pride to talk about the volumetric passing yards. Yeah.
Don't bother saying that he had 4 touchdowns. He had 185 yards. Yeah, whatever. But it's not salty at all. I love it. I loved spending a whole week talking about whether that we should boo Richard Sherman, by the way. Like,
so there's a brief conversation. Mina Kimes was of the opinion that you cannot possibly be a fan of the Seahawks if you were willing to boo Richard Sherman. Which that's I think at one extreme end, right?
I think her main point was, why are you spending time dwelling on the fact that he's talking shit now when he's responsible for many and by far the best moment in Seahawks history, the tip, which sent him to the Super Bowl. Why are you going to why are you wasting energy, like talking about what he's doing now? Like, just, I don't know. So she was like, I think her theory was like, embrace the joy or whatever. And so I definitely was on that spectrum where
that's too positive for me. I don't know if I can experience football like that.
But yeah, so anyways, back to Moore and Lockett. Both of those guys, I think, have been really, really efficient. Lockett especially has gotten really good to me at really separating late in his route. Mm-hmm. That's something that Michael Irvin talked about a lot, where it doesn't really matter what you do the first couple steps. It's what happens when the ball's arriving. And he's gotten a lot better at these subtle push-offs. Some people call it OPI or whatever, and that's fine.
OPI or whatever.
It is OPI in some cases, but it only counts if it's called. And so I think he's been really good at these subtle
it's a skill to hide it from the ref. Yeah.
Right. And you know, as long as I'm using way like hyperbolic comparisons, Antonio Brown is amazing at it, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
I'm not gonna say. To be clear, don't put this.
No. David Moore is Keenan Allen. Tyler Lockett's Antonio Brown. We're good. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, essentially, the Seahawks have the best receiving core in the NFL. Is what I'm saying. No, I'm just saying Lockett's gotten a lot better at that sort of. He's not big. He's got short arms, but he's been really good.
It's like a 29-inch. Yeah. No, he's got really short arms.
So I think that is a talent, that is a skill he's developed, and it's become a big deal for him. I think 4 of his touchdowns this season have been of the very tight variety where he separates late and creates room for himself to catch the ball. And so he's Antonio Brown.
So yeah, right, yeah. So okay, so there is part of this, like the construction of this receiver group, that does remind me of the Vikings, right? Because you've got undrafted Jerron Brown, undrafted J.D. McKissick. I think Jerron Brown was undrafted out of Clemson. Undrafted Malik Turner, 7th round David Moore. Yeah, I think Doug Baldwin was undrafted too, right?
Doug Baldwin was undrafted, and you're right, Jerron Brown was.
Yeah, and then Tyler Lockett, 3rd round pick. I mean, the Vikings, like not even undrafted, like a tryout. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, crazy. 5th round pick. Yeah right. And Eldrick Robinson's like their 3rd best receiver, and you've got like this 1st round pick just kind of floating around. And
I'm still really bummed out that the Seahawks didn't take Diggs, because we heard that they were high on him at the time. And
oh yeah, he absolutely seems like a Seahawks kind of.
Yeah.
Wow, rough.
So I'm still sad.
I mean,
about
your receiver core's doing all right.
Yeah, it's fine since we've got the Antonio Browns and Keenan Allen.
Yeah, right. But I would say Treadwell would probably contest the notion that the first few steps don't matter. That's where he loses.
Well, that's fair. It can't be terrible. You can't like get held up for like 3 or 4 seconds. You're never going to hit the ball.
Right. But yeah, it's like a undrafted, late drafted, kind of undersized receiving core that somehow makes big plays and contested catches.
Thielen to me is just mind-boggling, by the way. Just kind of go off tangent, but he's like the way that he's developed and what he is doing now is just, it doesn't make any sense. Like, how did he go undrafted? And he got cut several times, didn't he? Or at least like, sent down to the practice squad or whatever?
Well, he got sent down to the practice squad once.
Okay.
But what's wild is that if you plug Chad Graff at The Athletic got some of his like high school highlights. Mm-hmm. He was like bad in high school. like there's this whole story like, oh, no one wanted to recruit him, and he thought basketball was the better sport, and it's like, well, he had a lot of reason to think that.
As it turns out, people can improve at things. So
yeah, he's gotten better every year, man. Like, it's crazy. Like this year, he's even better than he was last year. And last year, he was like, that's when like his story kind of broke and made waves. So it's a really dope story. I love that he was going to be like a dental equipment salesman. Like that was his plan, and football was like the moonshot. Like
yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to try it for the Vikings. Then 3 days later, I'll be back here if that doesn't work out to sell dental equipment.
He's got to be one of my favorite players to watch. Like he's just puts on clinics. He's insane.
Yeah. Well, he also does the first few steps really well. He's got one of the best releases in the NFL.
Yeah.
Telling me the first few steps don't matter. Come on.
Oh, that's not okay. Let me.
I know. I'm just giving you.
This is what Michael Irvin says. You can't beat a guy necessarily in the first. Well, I think the way that he was talking about it was when you're going up against a Richard Sherman.
No, I know. I'm just
I know that you're giving me shit, but I'm trying to like. I'm formulating it in my brain now too. It does matter what you do, and I mean, look at Doug Baldwin. Like he wins in his first couple of steps all the time, and so yeah, there's different ways. There's many ways to skin a cat. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk about the pride of the Seahawks, the defense.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to keep just digging.
Bobby Wagner's really good.
Yeah, okay. So, defensive player of the year candidate if Aaron Donald didn't exist. I agree. Fine.
Yeah.
But I want to talk first actually about the backup tackles because I love Poona Ford a lot.
Yes.
I thought he was amazing at the Senior Bowl. What I've seen of him in the NFL was great. Why isn't he playing more?
I don't know. It's actually interesting because the Seahawks have done. I know that the fans want him to play more, and the fans actually were really high on Naz Jones too last year, and he's kind of taken a while to get going. So
was he a tweener coming out, like a defensive end, defensive tackle, or am I wrong about that?
I think. Well, he's 6'5", so yeah, he's like. I think you'd be like a 5 technique and a 3-4. In a lot of people's minds, and so I don't know. It's just one of those things where.
We've got a Red Bryant. Excellent.
Yeah. People don't really know what the Seahawks are doing at the defensive tackle position. People were pissed they cut Tom Johnson. Poona Ford's not playing as much as people would want. Naz Jones isn't playing as much as people would want. So I don't know. There's no real explanation for it. But Ford has been, in the limited amount of snaps that he's gotten, he's been pretty disruptive. Like he's definitely taken advantage of his snaps. I heard Pete Carroll. He's like 5'10".
Right, yeah, I was about to say, let's think about this, that Naz Jones is like 6'5", and Poona Ford is 5'10".
I heard Carroll talking about him on the radio last week, and
I thought Ford was going to be a 4th-round pick. Anyway, keep going.
He went undrafted, right?
Yeah, he went undrafted.
Yeah.
Insane.
Super a good athlete. He was a running back in high school. Can you imagine? I love it. I wish that he's their emergency running back, I bet.
Yeah, right.
That would be really fun, actually.
That would be great.
But Carroll was talking about, to be honest, I don't know a ton about Ford and why he's not playing more. Carroll was talking about how he's got really good leverage. Like you're never going to beat him.
Well, that's like the first thing you would say about a 5'10" dude, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I like him. He's exciting. I think he's one of those players that probably people looked at his height and were like, yeah, he can't play in the NFL, but he clearly can.
Yeah. Then the other backup, so Deion Jordan is somehow on a roster. It happens to be the Seahawks. And Rasheem Green was kind of an interesting draft prospect coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess they're technically linebackers like Barkevious Mingo and Jacob Barton. Is he also a pass rusher?
He's sort of a tweener. He's kind of like Mingo. I think they use him more as a pass rusher. It's like a third down rusher kind of guy.
So how do you feel about Mingo? How do you feel about Rasheem Green? And then we'll talk about like the starters, which I guess that makes sense too.
Yeah. So Green he's flashed at times. He's definitely not like ready to be relied on heavily. I think Mingo has been effective. He's like one of those guys where the Seahawks weak side linebacker position or strong side linebacker position is basically what Bruce Irvin was playing when he was here. Essentially, you're dropping into zones, you're setting the edge, and then on third down, sometimes you're rushing the passer or whatever. It's not like a hugely important position, and I don't know what his snap count is. What does he play? He's played 56% of snaps this year, so it's a part-time position. But he's been pretty good. I mean, he's athletic. I can picture in my mind a couple plays where he strung runs out and caught guys in the open field, and it was very impressive. But I will say, just overall, he hasn't had a major, huge impact. I'd say the same with Green and Martin. Both of those guys have flashed at times, but nothing too special yet. And Deion Jordan hasn't really done much. I was kind of excited about him, but he had injuries in the preseason. Well, if you look at his numbers last season when he played, and this is a small sample size thing, but I want to say among 4-3 defensive ends, he had the best pass rush productivity grade of any player, but it was on like
8 snaps,
20 snaps or 50 snaps or whatever. It was like, okay, I can see like why they're interested in this guy. He's like effective when he's in there and blah blah blah. He hasn't followed up on that, which is a good
followed up on his 20 snap.
Yeah, it's a good warning for taking too much out of a small sample size. But he did battle a lot of injuries in the preseason, and he started off like way behind the 8 ball, and so
Right.
yeah, he hasn't really done anything at this point.
All right, so let's actually talk about the starters. So I have no idea who Quentin Jefferson is, but Jaron Reed was, I thought he was supposed to be like a run plugger. You've got him next to Shamar Stephen, who is a run plugger in theory when he's playing well. How do you feel about that front besides Frank Clark, who is really good at football?
Quentin Jefferson, starting off, has been a pretty good surprise. He was back in the day. He was picked in the fifth round by the Seahawks. He didn't make. I can't remember. Like at some point he was on the Rams, so he didn't make their opening roster, or he got cut after a year or whatever. Made his way.
Kind of surprising given their defensive end depth.
Right. It was. Everyone I think people looked at it like, oh, that was a wasted pick, but he's back, thankfully, and he's actually playing pretty well. He's more of, I think, he's not the same size, but he's more of like in that Red Bryant mold in the sense that he's like a big run stopping end. He's like 290, 6'4". They have him play that sort of role where they try and make him so you can't run in his direction kind of thing. Jaron Reed has really come on as a pass rusher. He didn't really do much of that at Alabama.
Right.
I don't remember exactly I don't remember exactly the scheme they ran, but from what I understand, he was mostly just asked to like 2-gap and stuff, and he was really good at it. And but he's like, from what I understand, of like the alpha dog on that defensive line. Like people respect him. He's plays really, really hard. Tough guy. He's essentially what you picture when you picture an Alabama defensive lineman, but he's
right. Yeah,
he's been a lot better. He's been a little.
Well, but he doesn't look like he's 40, like his former line mate. So he's got that going for him.
Yeah. But yeah, he's been good. He's been a lot better in terms of providing some pass rush. I want to say he's like 5 or 6 sacks this season. So.
Oh wow.
So yeah, he's been pretty solid for them. Providing push and making tackles for loss and things like that. So he's been a big, nice surprise. I know a lot of people thought he was going to be a first rounder, and when he fell into the second round, the Seahawks traded up to get him, and so people were pretty excited about him. And it took him a little bit, but he's turning into like I think what people were excited about. He's got 6.5 sacks this year.
That is pretty wild.
So, especially
compared to Sheldon Richardson's 1 last year. I mean, that's just an upgrade, right? Sorry.
You just have to keep needling me about that.
It's my job, man. I'm required to in the contract that I wrote for me.
For instance, okay, so last game he had 1 sack and 6 quarterback hits. He's got 17 quarterback hits this year and 8 tackles for a loss. So
that
is
is
pretty solid.
Yeah.
Who else?
Okay, so that's who's going to be killing the Vikings. That's great. No, it's cool. Yeah, I mean the Vikings' offensive line is an ongoing issue, I guess. Let's talk about these linebackers. So you've got KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, and the star Shaquem Griffin.
Mm-hmm. God,
sorry, I have to keep doing this.
That was a low blow.
And then, well, I mean, the one making headlines, of course, is Michael Kendricks.
Yeah.
So I could have gone there, but
I would have.
Yeah, I guess I just
done that because he's not going to be around for long.
Well, he's got his brother game, right? He gets to play against his brother in like an abstract sense because they're not going to be on the field at the same time. Is he going to be on the field, Michael Kendricks?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
That's what the Seahawks are kind of making it sound like.
So is he going to replace Barkevius Mingo, or?
I think that's a good question. I should have researched this a little bit more. I think if anyone, he's going to probably take the place of Austin Calitro, who's played pretty well in place of KJ Wright. But to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't remember exactly how they used him earlier on. KJ Wright has been hurt with a knee injury all year. He played a few games, but then he kind of tweaked it again. He's just I don't think they can really rely on him at this point. But Calitro's been getting a good amount of snaps, and my guess is that they'd either rotate or use those two guys together. Like I said, I told you beforehand, I haven't watched as much Seahawks as I probably should.
you can't on air position yourself as a non-Seahawks guy. We're ruining this podcast, man. I need an expert.
I'm definitely, I'm the foremost expert.
Right. Thank you. Let's talk about Bobby Wagner. This is his second streak of 100 consecutive tackles without a missed tackle.
Jeez.
According to PFF. So that's all right.
Bobby Wagner is the living embodiment of a hawk tackle.
So you're saying he's going to allow a couple extra yards on tackles then? All right, that's good.
No, he's amazing. He's really fast. He's really instinctive. Like he seems to know where the ball's going before anyone else does, which is always weird to me. He's actually a really underrated pass rusher. Like he's a great blitzer. And don't be surprised if the Seahawks use him as like to blitz a few times this week, because he's just lightning fast through the line. So yeah, he's a really freaking good player.
So he allows a coverage rating, like a passer rating of like 80 when targeted. I think he's PFF's highest graded linebacker right now. So he's ahead of Luke Kuechly, which that's not bad.
Right. That's not bad.
Right. I just if we wanted to put it in context, that's not bad.
I think last week his game was kind of like a good encapsulation of like who he is as a player. So he's going
to get a pick six every game. That's who he?
A 99-yard pick six. Yeah. No, but he had. Let's see here. He had a pick six. He had 12 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits, and then he had a forced fumble. Essentially, he stole the ball from a ball carrier. So he like did like a defensive player statistical bingo. He had basically every stat you could get. He's just all over the place. He's just a really freaking good player. He's awesome.
But so like one of the things about high tackle counts, I think people who listen to this podcast know a lot, is by themselves they don't mean anything.
Right.
But I think his run stop rate is super friggin' high. He doesn't just tackle a lot. He like tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He's got it looks like 17 run stops in the year. On 31 run tackles. His coverage tackles tend to be dump offs, right? So he doesn't tend to give up deep plays. So it seems like he's pretty decent.
I'll say this: it's weird. Like if he takes a bad angle, you're like, wow, what was that? You know what I mean? He's just very, very disciplined. He's good in coverage. I think that's super important, obviously. He's just like, he's got tons of range. And yeah, he's like I said, the instinctive thing is kind of like a cliche or whatever. He's got very good play recognition. He's like,
I think he, in a lot of ways, is what Vikings fans kind of wanted. Not him specifically, but the model of player that he is wanted out of Eric Kendricks.
Yeah.
The kind of instinctiveness, the kind of speed and so on, the coverage play.
Yeah, exactly. Marrying all that, the headiness of like a Kuechly or whatever with the raw athleticism of whoever. Like, yeah, he's just all over the place.
Of Kuechly? Yeah, I mean, come on.
Well, Kuechly is a unicorn, but yeah, exactly.
He's the perfect linebacker. He's got the instinct and recognitions of Kuechly. He's got the smarts and instinctiveness of Kuechly. He's got the athleticism of Luke Kuechly. He's the perfect linebacker.
It's one of those things where you start giving an example of something and realizing halfway through that it's going to be terrible. Do you ever have that?
All the time.
Yeah. He's got the traps of Luke Kuechly. I was going to name like so like.
With the athleticism of what? Anthony Barr? He's not as athletic as Anthony Barr. He's just better.
Wagner?
No. Yeah. He's a much better linebacker than Anthony Barr, but I mean he's not like the raw athlete.
I think that Wagner ran like a 4.4, 4.5. He's a freak athlete.
Yeah, so did Anthony Barr, but at like 250.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Again, all right. Well, okay, so let's Okay, we got to talk just for half a second about Shaquem. He's been on the field a couple of times from scrimmage play, but I mean he's been a special teamer, right?
Yeah, so when KJ Wright went out to begin the year, Griffin got the start in week 1, and he just wasn't ready. Like, he just wasn't ready for it. He gave up he gave up a touchdown to Philip Lindsay on a swing pass or whatever. Just didn't cover the right area. He clearly just didn't look ready from a, I guess, knowing where he needed to be point of view. And so he basically hasn't gotten the job back. He had that one start in the beginning of the year, and then I haven't really seen him on the field much since then.
Sure,
but it was not a good performance, and so that was a little bit disappointing. But I mean, he's kind of learning a new role or whatever.
Right, because he's not a safety/defensive end like he was at UCF.
Yeah, exactly.
How much does he weigh right now? What's he playing at? Do you know? I think is a big thing.
I think.
Okay.
I remember them talking about it before the season, and there was some disagreement on like what he was playing at, but I'm guessing like 240, something like that, 235, 240.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's so then he has added a lot of weight since like the combine.
Don't quote me.
He was like,
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, sure. No,
230. What is he?
Because I think he was 225 at the combine, maybe 220.
Yeah.
I think at the Senior Bowl he was closer to 215.
Yeah. So
okay.
I guess that means he's probably playing at like 230. I don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the secondary. So Trey Flowers was a safety in college. He's a cornerback now. Shaquille Griffin is he their best defensive back right now?
No, he's had a rough year actually. He was really good his rookie year, and people were very encouraged about that. But it helps when you're playing across from Richard Sherman, I guess. And he switched sides. Now I want to say he's playing in Sherman's spot on the left, and so I think that's been a challenge for him to learn a different side. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where people are a little bit bummed out that he hasn't had his kind of the jump that people wanted him to be at the sophomore slump. So generally speaking, he hasn't been all that great. I'm looking at it right now. PFF has him graded at 51, which is not good.
Oof.
The Seahawks' entire pass defense has struggled. Losing Earl Thomas, I think, has been a factor, clearly. And he made up for a lot of stuff. Like obviously over the years, he's been the Seahawks' linchpin on their defense. And so,
I mean, when you're the second best safety in the NFL, and that's pretty important to a defense.
I can see the shit-eating grin on your face right now. But yeah,
I hope Ben Baldwin's listening to this.
I'm not a Harrison Smith hater. I'll put it that way. I like him. I think he's great. But yeah, so it's hurt. I think it's hurt kind of just overall the whole Seahawks secondary to lose Earl Thomas, and Flowers has been pretty. I think people are very encouraged with what Flowers has done. Like, he's made some really impressive plays. He's got great length. I think he's 6'3", really, really long arms, got good speed, and he's clearly he changed positions. Like you said, he was a safety in college. So coming in your first year and doing all that is very impressive. But
you don't typically see a position change in that direction from safety to cornerback. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. And the Seahawks have tried it a few times over the years. I can't even remember. Like, they've tried 3 or 4 different guys where you get all excited about it, and they talk him up after the draft. He ran like a 4.4, and he's 220, and we're gonna make him play corner, and it's gonna be great. And then like he gets cut a year later, and you're like, okay, well, that was dumb. And then this year, I think
they do it again.
This year they did it again, and when they picked Flowers, I basically was just like, fool me once, shame on you. Whatever. I was like, I'm not falling for that shit again. And then he did it, and he's actually been pretty good. So,
all right,
it's pretty fun. But yeah, he's still a rookie, and he still makes mistakes. He gets beat a little bit over the top, but I think there's a lot to be, there's very encouraging play from him. Hopefully Griffin kind of turns it around too, though.
Who covers who? Is it Griffin on Thielen, Flowers on Diggs? If one of them goes to the slot, I guess it's left side, right side.
I think they stay on sides. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Just whatever happens. Justin Coleman's their corner. Their slot corner. And
former Viking Justin Coleman.
Oh, was he on the Vikings?
He was like in camp. It was in camp.
Oh, gotcha.
Then he got cut. Goes to the Patriots. Actually plays well. Goes to the Seahawks.
That was like the one trade where Belichick is probably fucked it up. I'm sure there's others, but like, there's like the
Right.
old cliche, like don't ever trade with Belichick.
Right.
Coleman's been a good player for the Seahawks. I think they've done pretty good job of defending the slot. So, I mean, he's not like a shutdown guy like Chris Harris or anything like that, but he's been solid, and they only gave up, I want to say they gave up like a fifth rounder or something like that for him. So what's that?
You have Antonio Brown and Keenan Allen, but you're not even going to say this dude's Chris Harris. Man, he must really suck.
Oh my God. I should have shit. Missed our
Yeah, I mean, no, Justin Coleman was somebody I thought the Vikings shouldn't have cut. So glad to see I'm right. Sad to see I'm right. Same thing. But yeah, so that secondary is struggling a little bit. Obviously, they've got some pretty significant departures to deal with. One draft pick that I really liked, who I don't know how he's performing, but Tedrick Thompson had really great numbers from a coverage standpoint at Colorado, I think. And pretty good athleticism numbers, and I think the age he was coming out was good. So from an analytics standpoint, he was not quite a unicorn, but he was like a golden boy. He was supposed to be really great. Sounds like, he's no Earl Thomas. But I mean,
fair, yeah.
Yeah, but, kind of moving that necessary but maybe unfair comparison to the side, how do you think he's played overall?
For a guy, yeah, replacing Earl Thomas is a tough ask. I mean, it's like, imagine following that, especially in Seattle where Earl Thomas is sort of like a god.
Right.
I think generally speaking, people are kind of down on Thompson. He is clearly doesn't have the range or the instincts that Earl Thomas has. That's definitely a work in progress. For a free safety, I'd say the thing that's most impressive is the way he hits, which is not necessarily exactly what you're looking for. You want a guy who's like a lockdown coverage guy in the secondary, doesn't let anything get over the top, which has not happened. He's been beaten over the top a few times. So that's what worries me. But I will say he's one of those guys that'll come downhill and clobber a pass catcher. And I think the Seahawks, as much as
they do value that,
as much as football is changing in the sense that those big hits are not really a big part of the game anymore, I think they do value like that toughness. And obviously Cam Chancellor set a tone.
Then why did they cut Antoine Winfield, man?
I'm still sad about that. I don't know. What was it? Well, I guess it was like they wanted Walter Thurman. Who even made it?
No, it was Walter Thurman. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
It's like,
and like Vikings fans got back to me. They're like, Arif, tell me about why the Seahawks cut Antoine Winfield. And I was like, yeah, I guess they really like this injured slot corner.
Yeah, that was those days. In those days, the Seahawks had incredible depth in their secondary. So. I guess they wanted a guy with more club control or whatever. I don't know. People were definitely confused about that, though.
Yeah, because I heard he had a good camp.
He did, and he was running with the ones. I remember like being at training camp and looking at him. And he's like, whatever.
That hurts me so much.
Did he retired essentially, right? Like after that.
Yeah, he was like, well, I'm not going back to the Vikings, so I guess I'm not going back to football.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, okay, that's fair. The Vikings kind of screwed you.
So what could have been? Oh, Percy Harvin, Antoine Winfield. Oh well.
Even Kevin Williams didn't even get a ring with you guys. You did them all dirty.
Forgot about
man.
That.
What? Yeah. What is this?
Don't get mad at me. We were all really excited about him. Maybe that was your fault, though.
No, that might have been my fault. I made like the very exciting comparison. Kevin Williams is a RAV4, I think was the article, and that was my hype article. I was like, you guys know how much you all love RAV4s, right?
It's funny.
All right, so last player, real quick question. It's listed as Brad McDougald. I thought he was Bradley McDougald.
Yeah, I think people call him Brad.
But, yeah, okay. Is he good? I don't know anything about him.
That would be the basic, I think, starting point is, yeah, he's been good. He's been solid. The Seahawks, I think...
so he's Cam Chancellor. Got it.
Well,
I'm writing that down right now.
He's like a combination of Ed Reed. He's been solid. I think that's like as boring as of an analysis as that can be. Is he's been pretty solid, which is what the Seahawks need in the secondary at this point because they've just lost people. Yeah. He's been one of those guys that's been reliable as a tackler. He's like Tedrick, where I've seen him get beat a few times over the top, but generally speaking, he's making a positive impact. Their pass defense has just been not great. They don't have a ton of pressure. The cornerbacks have struggled, and their safeties have actually been a relative bright spot, I guess you'd say. And so I think generally people are pretty happy with McDougald. He's a value. I think they signed him for something really small over the offseason.
Right.
And it was, he's a starter. He's played well for them. He's played a lot of snaps for them, and you can't really complain. Again, it's really hard to act to follow when you're taking Cam Chancellor's place, and he's not Cam Chancellor in the sense that he's not a big hitter.
I mean, Cam Chancellor was like knocking over tackles.
Oh my God, yeah. Cam Chancellor was he was a linebacker playing safety essentially, and
yeah.
I mean, he was like the hardest hitting linebacker
in like a
the
4-4 front. Yeah.
So, like, Cam Chancellor would have been the hardest hitting linebacker, which is just insane. He's one of those people that everyone on the offense knows where he is all the time. Like McDougald is not that guy, and so there's a step up there, but I think he's a quality player. I'll put it that way. It's boring of an analysis that is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, then let's talk about the lock Hall of Famer on the roster, Michael Dixon.
The old Ray guy of the Seahawks.
Yeah, right.
He's been awesome. He's been really good. I mean,
I don't think he's PFF's highest rated punter. How good could he be?
Where is he on that list? Because I know early in the season he was kind of far down it, and he's
he made like one mistake, and PFF was like, "Well, these guys didn't make." No, he's number 1 now. Never mind.
Oh yes.
Wow,
Wow.
He clawed back from a shanked punt, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know exactly how that worked. Yeah, I remember him having one bad punt this year.
Must have been early in the year.
Which is saying a lot. I mean, like, so many guys are just like, oh, God, he just really shanked it at the worst possible time. Like, Dixon is booming, like, 60-yard punts, like, really consistently. Yeah, he's been really good. What's it? Let's see, Michael Dixon. I'm going to look up what his average is because it's...
his net is 44.2, which I believe leads the NFL among all punters who've played more than one game.
There you
go. Matt Darr currently leads the NFL in all punters, having taken 4 punts in one game with 44.3 net yards.
There you go. I remember... I don't actually remember.
Inside the 20, 24, touchbacks 2. Ooh.
Yeah, he's one of those punters where you could legitimately make a highlight reel, which is pretty
That's the most
real.
Seahawks thing I've ever heard.
He had one game, I don't remember, it was earlier on in the season, where he averaged like a net of 56 yards or something like that. He had like 3 60-yard punts. It was insane. He never looks like he gets much foot on it. It's kind of weird, like one of those things where however he kicks, for some reason the ball carries just insane. And yeah, he's been a lot of fun. I mean, it started out as a bit of a joke because there wasn't a whole lot to be excited about coming into the season. I think generally people...
Wait, you had Rashad Penn.
Yeah, people were pretty down on, I think... Well, I was, and I know for sure, and Seahawks Twitter was kind of just like smarmy about it. Like, this just wasn't going to be a great
Seahawks
season.
Twitter? Smarmy?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. And so it almost was a joke that the most exciting player on the team is Michael Dixon. But, I mean, when he was in preseason, he was doing things I've never seen a punter do. It was like, this guy's
What are the
blowing
things
my
he
mind.
could do that
Like literally,
you've never seen
literally
a punter
kicking
do?
it into the 1 yard line corner of the field. Like very.
Okay, I remember that. I remember that y'all made GIFs, man.
I'm
Y'all
saying
got real hype.
highlight reel of this guy. He's doing it's one of those things where there's actually a reason to be looking forward to punt because it's like, oh my God, he just boomed that thing.
Oh, come on.
And then it bounced it on the 1 yard line, and for some reason it didn't roll anywhere. It's like one of those things where it's like, how are you
just like thunk? It just stuck to the. I would love to see that where the ball lands at the 1 yard line and then just doesn't move, just
bounce.
like it just sticks there, and it doesn't like get embedded in the turf or anything like that. It's still the same amount of contact with the ground as like normally,
like hitting
Velcro. Yeah, exactly. Just thunk. He could do it.
I think he could. I mean, Australians are crazy. You don't really ever know.
Yeah, I was going to ask. He's probably Australian, right? Yeah,
he's Australian. He was the MVP of a bowl game at Texas. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So yeah, he's fun.
A bowl game, and by the way, he deserved. It wasn't even like a joke.
Right.
Like if you watch that game, it's like, oh yeah, these are positive expected points plays that he is solely responsible for.
Yeah.
How many Australian punters are there in the NFL now? I feel like we overrate it because there's so many that come in the draft, but a lot of them kind of don't shake out. There's probably not that many, actually.
I don't do a very good job of keeping up with what's going on in the punting world, to be honest with you.
Should. If you're going to hype up this punter, you got to have
He's the only punter I've ever been excited about.
Punters. Well, I mean, then you're not a Rams fan because Johnny Hecker's
pretty amazing. There was a GIF last week from Ruiz and Steven Ruiz, and it was like he was pointing at the camera as he was holding a field goal. Did you see this?
No, what? No.
I don't know what. I have no idea what the context is, but he caught like he was holding for a field goal, and he literally just looked into the camera and pointed at it as Legatron was kicking the field goal.
Wow.
I don't know the context at all, but it was like amazing.
It sounds like an insanely cool flex, though. Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you as soon as I find it.
Great. I'm gonna put it in the show notes.
Here.
And then Seabass upgrade over Blair Walsh, right?
Yeah, that goes.
Wow. Okay, that was not enthusiastic.
He did miss 2 extra points last week, so he's still a little bit stressful to me.
Is there a kicker problem?
Yeah,
just in the NFL.
Can they get a goddamn kicker that will actually like?
Okay, you're talking to the wrong fan base about that.
That's true.
I'm just in the NFL though. Do you think there's a kicker problem, like league wide?
It's a good question. It certainly seems like there's more guys just missing easy kicks. I remember earlier in the season there was like one day where there was a record amount of extra points missed.
Yeah, it was devastating to the Norse Code League where we subtract 25 points for every missed extra point.
That's awesome. Devastating. Yeah.
And just wreaked a swath of destruction through the league.
Oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really looked at it closely, but it does seem like a lot of guys are very unreliable these days.
Yeah, okay, so I got 3 final questions. One is if you could take any player from the Vikings, put him on the Seahawks, who would it be?
Well, that's
probably
a good one.
Harrison Smith, right? That would make
Ben
real mad.
Yeah, that would be a good one. The first person that came to mind was definitely Thielen, though. I mean, Diggs would be fun a lot, also.
I already got a pretty good receiving. We talked about this.
Let me look. I mean, Dalvin Cook is fun. We got enough receivers.
You can't name every player on the roster and give like a pithy 1-sentence scouting report.
Okay. If I can't have Thielen, since you're making me not choose Thielen, I think I'd choose Danielle Hunter.
I'm not making you do anything. And you can pick Thielen. I was just kind of surprised. I just thought, with Keenan Allen and Antonio Brown right there.
That's a good point. I would probably pick Danielle Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter, Frank Clark. That would be
a lot of fun.
Yeah, terrifying. Fair enough. Second, who are you most scared of playing against on the Vikings? You pick a player for the Vikings. Who do you think is going to do the most damage or represents the biggest threat to the Seahawks?
Oh, probably Danielle Hunter again. Like like I said, I'm worried about the pass rush affecting the Seahawks enough that it's going to kind of like throw their game plan off. So yeah, I would say, is Danielle Hunter your guys' best pass rusher? Would you say? I mean, has he passed Everson Griffin?
It's not even close. Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, Hunter then again.
Wow. Okay, I just saw this game.
Who would you take? Crap. Who would you take on the Seahawks for the Vikings?
Well, the mean-spirited answer is Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Rip Kirk. I don't know, that offensive line's pretty good now, huh?
That's hilarious. What the hell is happening?
I'm just eyeing J.R. Sweezy and just like, oh, how exciting.
Oh my God, things must be going terribly.
Arif, are you okay? Actually,
Wagner on your guys' team would be fun, I guess.
It would be. It's like apparently linebacker positional value is like the lowest of any position.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm sorry, Bobby Wagner, you're very good.
Got one MVP vote that one time, remember?
Who was that? That wasn't Tony Dungy, right? Okay. Man, what?
Yeah.
That was like his argument was like essentially like a plus minus argument that happened to like he forgot to mention that Earl Thomas missed a number of the same games or something like that. He's like, look at the defense with him and without him. Okay, wow. Actually, so the problem is the Vikings roster is very talented. It just it's not coherent for whatever reason.
You're going to say Michael Dixon, aren't you?
Matt Weil has actually been pretty good. I mean, there's like every 3 games he just like shanks a punt, and you're like, well, okay, but that's way better than the last guy.
Yeah.
So Dixon would be fun, and it would sap a lot of fun out of Seahawks Twitter, which is like a definite consideration for me.
You really are. I love it. You really are turning heel.
Yeah, you know what? I'm taking Russ. I like Kirk, but I mean, quarterback's pretty important, I guess. Plus, he gets to throw the ball more, which he deserves.
That would be fun. Yeah.
So I'll take Russ.
That's fair.
Final question. It's more about you. So you initially did a bunch of Seahawks-specific writing and then reporting and running this phenomenal website, Field Gulls, which when you were running it was the probably the best SB Nation website. Sorry, Daily Norseman, who hosts this podcast. But I mean, Field Gulls was amazing. And then you do SB Nation national stuff, and you're doing the Ringer. What's it like transitioning from doing team-specific work to national work?
It's hard. It's really hard. Because it's hard because I want to hold myself to the standard where I can talk intelligently about every single player, and it's really hard because there's frankly just a shitload of players on it.
You want to be Robert Mays.
I do. I look up to that. Like his ability to just rattle off interesting nuggets about every team's offensive line is so hard because I just frankly can't keep up with I don't even know who's injured on what team at certain points. It's just one of those things that's just really difficult to kind of keep up with everything that goes on with every team. I really enjoyed deep diving into, super nuanced philosophies and stuff like that with Field Gulls. I really enjoy doing that stuff. So I kind of do miss being able to go so deep into a team that you start to really know the personality and stuff of their coach and all that stuff. But I do like learning about other teams. I think it's really fun to get a bigger picture view because I think you've gone from micro to macro and it gives you a better idea of the trends, where the winds are blowing in the league, things like that. I think that's kind of that's the funnest part, but it's also the most difficult just to kind of make sure you're keeping up with all the details of every other team. It's a constant battle because so much changes throughout the season.
Is there a tendency to kind of cheat a little bit and write about the Seahawks a little bit more than any other team?
I haven't done that much this year, to be honest. I'm
not accusing him. I'm just asking if you felt the temptation.
Oh, for sure. And I tweet about the Seahawks more than any other team. Which is probably.
I mean, Mays tweets about the Bears kind of a lot.
Yeah, that's true. And Clark tweets about the Magic. But yeah, I think there's definitely a tendency to write about them a little bit more just because you know them way better and you can speak more intelligently about them. But I have tried to avoid the Seahawks for the most part this season because I didn't want it to be too much of a crutch. And so this Russell Wilson article was sort of my first big Seahawks article this season.
Was it cathartic or you're fine, I get to write about it?
I was nervous. I was really nervous to write about it.
Why would you be nervous? It's in your wheelhouse.
I know. That was the weird part. I was like, well, I think it was, how do you encapsulate Russell Wilson in an article that's somewhat digestible for a national audience? I tried to keep it. I think it was ended up 2,300 words or whatever. You could write 10,000 words on his career. And so I think it was a little bit daunting to be. Well, first of all, when Bill Simmons tells you he wants you to write about the guy that he wants you to write about Russell Wilson because that's the guy that you know about the best. That's a lot of fucking pressure.
That's pretty fair. Yeah.
So I was really nervous to write it. But it was definitely cathartic in the sense that I was like you said, it's kind of back into my wheelhouse. getting to see the all 22 and really diving into it was like, wow, he has made like legitimate steps this year, like going back to last year and the year before. Like a lot of the things that you're starting to rip your hair out, because obviously Seahawks fans have a funny relationship with Russell Wilson, where in the sense like you love him, but at the same time he like is really frustrating too, at times. But kind of he's managed to eliminate a lot of the things I think kind of like worried me early on in his career, and hopefully he can keep doing that, because development is never linear, and you go back and forth and you have bad games and all that. But overall, like, it was really cool to dive deep into that and be like, wow, he really has improved. Like, this is he's even better, I think, than I was giving him credit for, kind of just without watching him every single week kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Does he get the credit he deserves if that pass in the Super Bowl is a touchdown, or, I don't know, you run it?
Oh, I think it would definitely be a different narrative. I don't know if he would necessarily get the same credit, because I think the legacy would have been the Seahawks defense, even though like the Super Bowl against the Patriots was more of like an offensive Super Bowl. I think the legacy would have been that defense, the Legion of Boom, just beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in back-to-back Super Bowls, and they're a dynasty. And it would have been,
what a hilarious way to characterize that Manning game. They just beat Peyton Manning. It's like, well, yeah.
That was Manning's good year. That was when he threw 55 touchdowns.
No. Because you're separating it up by seasons, and what you need to do is separate it up by literally the year. And that year was very bad for him.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like the season, the year that the Seahawks played Manning in the Super Bowl. That was the best offense of all time at the time.
No, the season was. Yeah. Right?
Oh,
what I'm saying
like
is, because the year turned over. Yeah.
I get you. Well, if you put it that way, I mean, come on, legacies are always just bullshit narratives anyway.
No, you're right, yeah.
but you know what I mean? Like, I think people probably would have looked at it like the legacy was the defense was an all-time great defense, and
that's fair.
Now that doesn't happen. Now it's like a one-off Super Bowl win that the Seahawks happened to win. It totally changed the narrative, you know?
It's kind of like the opposite of the 49ers teams with Joe Montana, right? Because a lot of those years they had like the second or the third best defense in the NFL. But they also had Joe Montana. So Joe Montana gets the credit. Yeah.
And that's what you remember. I don't know if that's interesting. That's really interesting, because I don't know if that would have been the same with Russell Wilson. I wish that we would know, though, because that would have been more fun for me personally.
I bet. All right. Cool. Before I let you go, score predictions, anything that we covered everything. Yeah. So anything we may have missed that you wanted, maybe interesting nuggets you forgot to mention?
We didn't talk about Frank Clark. I will say Frank Clark's been very good. Hopefully the Seahawks sign him to a long-term extension soon. As for score predictions, the one thing I was going to say, I actually looked this up before the show, and I wanted to ask your opinion on it, if it means anything to you. The Seahawks, I believe, are 13-2 in primetime home games since 2012. Do you think that actually?
Oh no!
Or do you think that's just weird?
If it does, that's really rough, because the Vikings were like
isn't Kirk
1-5 on Monday Night Football? 0-6. Yeah. The Vikings are bad in primetime. Cousins is bad in primetime, except I guess last week.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago or whatever. Yeah, I mean, if it's meaningful, that's bad.
I'm just curious if it is meaningful.
I don't think it's that meaningful.
Yeah.
The Seahawks have also happened to be like good in the years they've been in prime time. So,
they also did have a legendary defense for like 3 of those seasons, and they had
we may have just talked about.
They had an incredible home field advantage in those times. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it might not mean anything, but I
mean, like what the Patriots are like. They've only had like 19 total losses at home, right? And so
That's insane.
Since Brady's been the quarterback, and not like since the beginning of the franchise. that would need to be investigated. But I mean, like, also their like home primetime record is like some like absurd 36-0.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, it's probably not meaningful.
I don't know. The Seahawks home field advantage is evaporated a little bit. over the years.
Well, it used to be, I think somebody did the math, and it used to be closer to 5 points than the traditional 3.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, actually, Vegas was giving them 5 points. Is that what you mean? Or, like, that's just...
No, because, no, I think someone did, like, I don't think it was Vegas was giving them 5 points. I think someone, like, did the math.
It was just worth. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was just, like, worth, yeah. And now it's probably closer to 3.5, 4. It's still probably better than the league average, but
yeah,
it's not the thing it was, I guess.
No, it's definitely changed. Let's see, score. Let's say 28-26 Seahawks. Say that.
Oh, that sounds like a missed field goal.
Sounds like a scoregami, which is. Did you hear about this? The Seahawks have had one scoregami in every season that Pete Carroll's been a coach.
Wow, that's extremely Pete Carroll. Wow.
Right?
I love that.
It's weird as hell.
Okay, cool. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, weird as hell. I think he's going for them. In fact, he knows about scoregami. Like he's aware of it. Yeah.
I think the wildest thing to me was when the year that he like tweeted out like these arcane clues.
Oh, he does that every year.
They were targeting in the draft.
Yeah.
And like somebody at Field Goals like broke it down, and he was like, "Okay, that's very impressive."
Yeah, that was Jared.
Like he acknowledged it.
Yeah, that was Jared Singer. He like said something like Jared knows or something like that on the draft. Like they had like a sign or whatever, and they held it up in their draft room. It was pretty funny.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know. Like
wow.
I don't know if. Well, I don't know exactly if all the clues that Jared got were right on, but it was like whoa. One of those things where I think he's like, oh, I got to make these a little bit more vague, maybe.
Okay, all right. Oh yeah, I guess I should give you my score prediction.
Yeah, what do you think?
Man.
Do you think?
Okay, so I think the Vikings are legitimately
it's gonna be a shootout or a tight game or like a defense game.
I mean, given like what the Seahawks don't have very many possessions per game, so.
Right.
So that does make it difficult. I would say it's probably going to be closer to a shootout. So I think, well, I mean, you chose something that hit what's likely going to be the over. I haven't looked at the numbers yet.
Yeah, 40-something, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, you pick something that's like the over. I would probably pick something that's like the over, too. Yeah, I'll say, yeah, honestly, it's probably a 27-25 in favor of the Seahawks. I don't want to say things like that. I think the Vikings are legitimately a playoff caliber team. They've only had one bad loss against a good team. They also have a bad loss against a bad team. But all their other games against really good teams have been really close, and that tends not to repeat itself, right? Like you tend not to lose close games if you've lost close games before. They tend to just be 500. So it's a good team. So I think it's a playoff caliber team. But also I think the Seahawks are a better team. At least as it's constructed currently.
Interesting.
And I mean, y'all are at home.
I think that's why I give the advantages, like the home advantage.
I mean, I only gave like a 3-point swing to the Seahawks, so it wasn't like that significant of a difference. But I think the Russell Wilson does make a huge difference versus like say Kirk Cousins. Like Russell Wilson's like the best fourth quarter stats of like any quarterback right now, right?
Yeah,
like,
I saw that Pat Thorman from PFF tweeted that it was the best fourth quarter performance of the last 5 years, which is again going back to 2014 or whatever, 13, and
but like second place is also him though, like because he's done this in previous years.
Oh yeah, he's always been like the finish strong guy, which is like a Seahawks thing too. Like Pete Carroll loves talking about that. But yeah, he had the most touchdowns in the fourth quarter since going back for 5 years, and the best pass rating in the fourth quarter going back 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty crazy.
It'd
be nice if they played better in the first quarter, but that always.
The same is true of the Vikings, man. They really suck in the first quarter.
Like you can't.
The problem is they're not
out if you want.
Right. So the Vikings are very good in the second and third quarter, and defensively they're very good in the fourth quarter. But I mean, like, that's only half a football game for the offense. So.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my concern is that they won't be able to compact enough great football in the second and third quarter where they're legitimately a top like 3 or 5 team the second and third quarter. to like balance out like the disasters
Right.
in the first quarter and like the tepidness in the fourth. So yeah, remind everyone where they can follow you if you've got something to plug.
Danny
let 'em know.
B. Kelly on Twitter, and the Fantasy Football Podcast, which has been a lot of fun to do this season, getting into the fantasy world. And then I got an article on the Broncos coming out tomorrow, like whether we should be taking them a little bit more seriously or not. Number 5 in DVOA, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, I noticed that like today, and I was like, that's nuts.
Yeah, they've played at the second hardest schedule this season. They've and it was like you were saying just now. They played basically all their games real close. The only bad loss they had this year was to the Jets of all people. But
okay.
yeah, it was kind of random. Like that game didn't really make any sense. They gave up like 500 yards. But otherwise, they played the Rams close. They just barely lost to the Rams. They played the Chiefs close 2 games. They would have beat the Chiefs if Keenum hadn't missed a wide open Demaryius Thomas like right by the end zone in the very end of the game.
Color me shocked.
And then I think they lost to the Ravens. They beat the Chargers. No, they lost. I can't remember exactly what it was. They lost to the Texans by like a missed field goal at the very end. They basically are like 2 plays away from being 8-4, and the narrative's completely different. So it's just an interesting team kind of down the stretch. They might not make the playoffs, but they got a good shot at it because they have a really easy schedule down the stretch.
All right.
Anyway,
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. That's Danny Kelly. He already gave you how to follow everybody. This is a really great show. This is one of the most fun hours I've had interviewing a guest in a long time.
Yeah, that was fun.
No shade to the other guests, but this was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Thanks, man.
Well, let's go into the mailbag here. And the first question is from Alex K., who asks, the Vikings defense has historically struggled against running quarterbacks. If they do not implement a spy on Wilson, who are the key members of the defense who need to step up in order to contain Russell Wilson? And Kyle Slaby asks something very similar and asks, do you see J-Ron Curse being used as a QB spy like he did in Chicago?
Yeah, so I think that, A, we are likely to see a little bit of that, but B, it should be noted that Wilson, like as Danny kind of alluded to, Wilson's rushing less than he ever has in his career, and then obviously that includes quarterback scrambles and designed runs. So he has, I think, 3.8 rushes per game, which is the lowest in his career. He's gone up to above 7. Last year he was above 6. And so while that is something to like watch out for, it's just not as big a part of his game as I think a lot of us are used to seeing. So it's not as big a deal, but obviously you want to do something about his ability to run the ball. The biggest concern actually, and the biggest benefit a spy might provide, is that a quarterback spy like J-Ron Curse might be able to clog up lanes even as he stays ahead of the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball. Because Russell Wilson's ability to kind of escape from the pocket, scramble, prevent pressures from finishing into sacks, that's all difficult, but it would be complicated by someone kind of plugging up a potential escape option. So it may result actually in more sacks and less in preventing really awful quarterback runs. But yeah, Curse did a great job once he was assigned that role against Trubisky, who's been doing a pretty good job running the ball this year. And I would expect, despite the fact that Curse sometimes has like tackling issues and Wilson is like really phenomenal at avoiding tackles, that he would play a very similar role.
All right, next question is from Bob Garman, who asks, would the Vikings have a better record if they had retained Teddy as opposed to signing Cousins?
You can't know. Teddy hasn't even played in a regular season game, so it's difficult to tell. I will say the best answer probably relies on our ability to say that Teddy provides really significant cap savings, and so you probably could have gone after like another offensive lineman or something. So there is that. And in that context, yeah, I guess. But it's, we have no idea how good Teddy is right now, as much as I stand for him.
Yeah.
It's impossible to tell.
Joe Schneider asks, Waynes and Kendricks did not practice today being Thursday. Between the two, which one would hurt the team's chances more if they couldn't play on Monday?
Well, cornerbacks tend to be just significantly more important than linebackers. So probably Waynes, but As rough as Holton Hill has been the past 3 weeks, when I think he's played like significant snaps in 2 of those games, I would still suspect that Hill would play decently well. Whereas, Wilson and for Hendricks, you've got some significant liabilities against the run versus a team that runs the ball, I think, more than anyone else once you account for game situation. The fact that they're, behind or ahead or whatever. They run the ball a lot. So that would be an issue. All that said, I think the positional value stuff outweighs. So I guess I'd probably still pick Waynes.
Zach Beeman asks, in their last 6 Monday Night Football games, the Vikings are 1-5 and Cousins is 0-6.
Yeah.
Should I expect something different?
I predicted the Vikings would lose, but these stats are not that important to me. I don't think that they usually signify very much. They don't tend to sustain themselves going forward. So no, but only because the Seahawks are probably a better team, especially because they're at home, and less because the Vikings just shit the bed in prime time.
Kyle Slaby asks, if you had a guarantee that both teams make the playoffs, who are you rooting for, Arif?
I guess I'd probably still pick Waynes. I'm rooting for the Vikings, dude.
Zach
Come
Beeman
on.
asks, in their last 6
I'm 100% sure.
games, the Vikings are 1-5, and Cousins is
Oh,
sure you were sure.
Yeah.
Should I expect something different? After Dusty left the pod, if James had gone to Twitter saying we need to find a co-host who will demand excellence of Arif, would he have been fired?
These stats are not that important to me. I don't think that they usually signify very much. They don't tend to sustain themselves going forward. No, but only because the Seahawks are probably a better team, especially because they're at home, and less because the Vikings just shit the bed in prime time.
Kyle Slaby asks, if you had a guarantee that both teams make the playoffs, who are you rooting for, Arif?
I'm rooting for the Vikings, dude. Come on.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I'm 100% sure.
All right. I'm just want to make sure you were sure. Also, after Dusty left the pod, if James had gone to Twitter saying we need to find a co-host who will demand excellence of Arif, would he have been fired?
I guess that would make you the former assistant head coach / linebackers coach of the Packers.
Yeah.
That was hilarious, man. Probably not. I think if James had tweeted that out, it probably would have just been a very accurate assessment.
Truth. Kenneth Allen asks, how much does losing to the Seahawks affect the Vikings' chances of nabbing the 6th seed?
Pretty significantly. So if the Vikings lose, they drop from a 60% chance of making the playoffs to a 40% chance. Whereas if they win, they jump up from 60 to 80, which I guess functionally means that the people who craft these percentages give basically the Vikings and the Seahawks an even chance in this game. But yeah, it's a 40-point swing in either in one direction if you move from the win to the loss. But 40% is not devastating, right? It's something, if you win out after that, you still make the playoffs. Because I think if the Vikings win out, which includes a tough game against the Bears, they have a 96% chance of making the playoffs. So it's not impossible, right, if they lose, but it is really significant.
All right. Next question is also from Kenneth Allen, who asks, how are the Seahawks going to run against Linval Joseph? Are they just going to avoid it by running to the outside, or is there another scheme option available for them?
So Kelly also mentioned that they're mixing it up a little bit more often, so we do get to see different kinds of outside runs, so not just outside zone, but also power, which that gives you more players at the point of attack. That's kind of the point of that design. And if you run power away from Linval Joseph, you might actually be in a good spot and be able to run the ball. So it is possible to run away from him. At some point, they'll probably run into him, right? Because you can't just have outside runs. But yeah, they're probably not going to be super successful doing that, but they're still going to be relatively successful at probably the other runs that they have. And then also Wilson is just a crazy efficient quarterback right now.
Is this going to be the year where there's more Vikings on the Pro Bowl team starting than there are for any other team because we're the most stacked athletically, or are we like the most stacked group that didn't end up making it deep into the playoffs?
Oh, right. Yeah. Like actually fielding the team with the most Vikings?
Yes.
Maybe, but I don't think that there's as many Pro Bowl candidates this year as there were like the last 2 years because, some players have just fallen off, right? And it's always interesting, right? Because Anthony Barr, I think he made the Pro Bowl a year after he should have, which is the same thing that happened to Chad Greenway. It's just weird how like these things sometimes don't catch up. But like, Linval is probably going to be like the sixth alternate again, so he's probably going to play and so on. But I don't know. I feel like there have been other years where there are literally more Vikings on the field than what we're going to see this year. Although I really like the nature of that question.
Don from Ohio asks, with Philly playing better, and we now know the Packers were never a Super Bowl contender, is it fair to say the Vikings have been the most disappointing team in the NFC this year?
Well, yeah. If you don't count Philadelphia and Green Bay, are the Vikings the third most disappointing? Is the question. Because you have to count Philadelphia and Green Bay because I had those expectations going in. You can't just be like, well, they're bad, so... but most disappointing, I don't know, the Seahawks are up there, right? Because they haven't, especially to start the season.
Well, their preseason looked awful. Like, their preseason looked abysmally bad. So,
the first two games weren't great either. Yeah. So, maybe, there's got to be other, like, really disappointing ones. Like the Bengals are always disappointing.
Well, if we're just going straight up NFC, NFC, we can look at the
Lions. I think the Lions thought before the season that they were really in contention for a playoff spot.
Yeah, that they cratered hard. What about Arizona? Arizona had some form of hope. They had a great.
But they spent up for a quarterback, right? That they thought would help them this year.
Would last more than a couple of games, yes.
Right, and needed to be cut so that you didn't have to worry about those guarantees or whatever.
Exactly. It's not like you could have watched. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, right around the time that you're hoping you're like having all your hopes on the legs of Sam Bradford is really when you should be fired, and then they were. So there's that.
Yeah, so I think Arizona had a lot of hope. Washington did, obviously, because they spent a bunch for Alex Smith.
Oh, San Francisco for sure. Oh God, even from the preseason on, like San Francisco just kept hitting road bumps.
I don't know if any of those three teams were more disappointing than the Vikings, though, because like the expectations the Vikings had were much higher. So I would say the Vikings are behind Philadelphia and Green Bay, and I would say Philadelphia and Green Bay count. But there are a bunch of disappointing teams in the NFC this year, which is conversely how you get surprising teams, right? I actually thought if I was going to pick between like the Saints, the Vikings, the Eagles, and the Rams for who is going to drop off the most going into the next year, I was going to pick the Rams. But yeah, I'm an idiot, so whatever. Don't listen to me. Stop listening to this podcast. Don't donate to the Patreon. Please donate to the Patreon. But yeah, the Vikings are probably third.
Yeah. Also, what has been Arif's favorite keto recipe that he's made so far?
Oh, the keto mashed potatoes were delicious, which it's cauliflower, which you don't think would be good. I mean, I've had good cauliflower and I've had bad cauliflower, so I'm not saying that like good cauliflower doesn't exist. But like when you make it, it smells kind of like bad cauliflower. So I'm probably pronouncing that weird. Is it cauliflower? I'm sorry, guys.
It really just depends on where you are in the country at this point.
I think in Minnesota it's cauliflower, so whatever. Suck it up, guys. Rub some dirt on it.
Gray duck it up here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but yeah, we put that on a keto shepherd's pie, and it was amazing. Oh my god, it doesn't actually taste that much like mashed potatoes, but it's like reminiscent of a lot of its qualities. But it's just really good. It's like you steam the cauliflower, and it's been a bit since we made it, so we got to make it again. Steam the cauliflower, run it through a food processor, add like as much butter as it can hold. Yeah, of course, that's delicious.
I was going to say the worst cauliflower I ever had. So I'm just trying to make sure both sides are okay here. I'm sticking to sports too. By talking about cauliflower, the worst cauliflower I ever had was at Holy Land in Minneapolis.
Wow.
I got so sick afterwards. I didn't understand why, because I didn't think that you could get sick from, a vegetable being fried or whatever it was, but that was easily the worst tasting and the worst after effect of any cauliflower I've ever had. I did not enjoy my Holy Land experience.
Wow, that's sad. I love Holy Land. I haven't had their roasted cauliflower or whatever, so I don't know. But I would say go back and not get that. Just get something else.
I don't even think I ordered it. I think the people I was with ordered it and they were sharing it for the table.
Rough.
Yeah. So I got like indirectly hit by all that. It was awful. Also, Don just wants to congratulate Arif on his Colgate Raiders making it to the FCS playoff quarterfinal.
Very proud of my Colgate. What is it, Raiders? Yeah, Raiders. Yes. Lifelong fan.
All those long years of rooting this team on has finally paid off. I know they are playing that team who plays their football games in a high school gym, but when Colgate beats NDSU on Saturday, will Arif buy Colgate products only, toothpaste, dental floss, toothbrush, etc., for the rest of his life, and will he send Eric Thompson a Christmas gift basket of said products for years to come?
Don, you know that me being a lifelong fan of Colgate, the Colgate Raiders, and their coach... Dan Hunt. Is that a real name? You know that I've been buying Colgate products my whole life as a means of supporting the team, who are surely affiliated with the dental care company.
Dan Hunt. I'm really looking forward to seeing what wide receiver Owen Rocket and running back James Holland, according to Wikipedia, are going to do on Saturday.
Is this the whitest team in the FC? Hold on, we got to find out about this team. What? Okay, well, who's the quarterback for my Colgate Raiders?
All I know is is this defensive back coach or defensive back?
One of the
Ben Hunt is the defensive.
The Colgate Raiders are in fact the whitest team in the FCS. Oh wow! Did you take a look at the roster, man?
Yeah, I'm looking.
James Holland Jr. Well, that sounds like the former Gophers receiver. It's not, but that's cool.
That's whiter than the football team at Valley City when I went there for a year and a half.
But yeah, let's see. Quarterback. So either quarterback Sage Atwood, Grant Brenneman, or Jake Froschauer.
Either. Like you don't know, like you haven't been watching them all year and cheering them on while they play at Andy Kerr Stadium.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's. I just wanted to, because they might mix it up. It's NDSU. All sorts of things could happen. I'm surprised. Hamilton, New York, isn't that far away from New York City. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't try to convince me to rent a car and go out and take a look at this. I knew it was more a trip for me. Going out to Colgate that time I went. In our trip to New York.
I can appreciate that. That explains where you were for a little while there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I named those quarterbacks because both of them have taken Grant Brenneman has taken 183 passing attempts and Sage Atwood has taken 31. So really anything could happen. Grant Brenneman has also got 122 rushing attempts. He's clearly the engine of the offense.
Stud.
It's great. It's a big part of the reason they went 10-1 and have scored very many points, I'm sure.
Is that a technical term? Is that one that your copy editor is cool with at the Athletic?
They've scored very, very many points. Points per game, 29.5. Opponents, 7. Wow.
That's a crushing defense. That is a crushing defense. Which we both know because we've been watching Colgate for...
And their star defender, TJ Hall, like you've already mentioned.
Exactly. Well, that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code.
I'm so sorry, guys.
This has been fantastic. Arif, what do you have to plug?
Besides the Colgate Raiders playing on Saturday.
Go Raiders.
Go Raiders. Yeah, I've got a piece coming up at The Athletic previewing the Seahawks game. A lot of it's just going to be about game flow and less about like the Seahawks specifically. But yeah, that's up. I also have a piece up at The Athletic about John DeFilippo, which you heard a lot about in the last episode. That's been getting a lot of, it's got like 50 comments right now on The Athletic. So wow, it's gotten a lot of response.
Bunch of people have been talking about it on Twitter as well. It's definitely worth the read.
Oh, good. Great. I hope I'm not like
no one is like burning you in effigy yet. So,
oh well, then I haven't done my job.
No, not well. They may be doing it in Fargo after the loss to Colgate University. Damn you, Arif! How dare you cheer on a team that's probably about 60 or 70 miles away from Syracuse, New York? How dare you?
Oh, holy crap. Nick Wheeler, 16 tackles for loss. But yeah, that's, you can find my work at The Athletic per usual. Those are the two articles that I've got going on this week. And then I think just perpetually, I think the Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter articles I wrote a while back are still relevant and good reads now. So check those out too.
All right. So that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. If you have enjoyed it, first off, cheer on Colgate Raiders this Saturday again. Really do appreciate it. You know, it's weird. The whole like I usually cheer for like Bison like football just because it's a like relatively close to Grand Forks and all that. But the Bison fans have been really like anti-UND lately. And like,
wait, why?
I have no idea. We don't compete in a sport like at the same level as NDSU at all. Like they have an FCS team.
I think women's basketball, they're like rivals.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I know.
Fine, but like otherwise, like on the same like level, it's not.
They don't even have a hockey team, man. I don't get it.
Yeah, like NDSU, like the pride of their like whole situation is the football team. Great. The pride of UND is its men's hockey team, which has a bunch of national championships as well. So like the fact that there's some like NDSU people making fun of UND is like, yeah, the football team only has how many like national championships? That's great. UND's got more. Like it's
right.
It's dumb. Like I enjoy watching NDSU football to a certain extent, but like NDSU fans are becoming the worst part of that whole situation.
So you're saying NDSU fans are like Packers fans?
It's becoming a thing. I mean, think
the colors. I mean, it follows.
It's something about that green and yellow. I don't know.
Can't trust it.
No, I can't say I do. So if you've enjoyed Norse Code, you can go to patreon.com. I'm saying Patreon again for like an idiot. Patreon.com/Norse Code or paypal.me/Norse Code if you have enjoyed the show and hear value in what we have presented to you today. So we will be back next week to talk about the Seahawks game and how everything kind of shook out. But for Arif, for Danny Kelly, again, thanks for coming on. For myself, my name is James. Thank you guys so much for listening. And please remember to tweet that, even if it is a work in progress. And we will talk to you guys next week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hasan, and he can be found on Twitter at Arif Hasan NFL. I am your producer and co-host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can make your one-time donation at paypal.me/NorseCode, or a recurring monthly contribution can be made by visiting patreon.com/NorseCode. Any questions or comments that won't fit in a tweet can also be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.